I am going to be speaking with Ken Kring. He is a business leader with extensive experience in marketing and strategy. He has previously worked with Rooted Wealth Advisors and has held positions with Walgreens, Sears Corporation, and Walmart stores. Ken has experience designing and executing initiatives that overcome barriers, shift perceptions, and drive behaviors. He emphasizes the importance of integrated thinking in driving profitable growth by leveraging diverse business components effectively. Ken, I want to welcome to Getting to AHA.
Thank you, Darshan, for having me. I really appreciate it.
So let's start, from the beginning and tell us the aha moments that put you on the path that led you to integrated thinking. And we'll talk more about that as well.
Sure. Very good. What happens is it's probably easiest if I tell this story a little bit chronologically. That way people can see how it builds and go, oh, okay, feels like very much like my experiences. Years ago, I was working at a place called Cancer Treatment Centers of America. And I was leaving the meeting room or the conference room with the CEO. And I hadn't been out of business school too long. And he said, Ken, I really want to figure out how to grow the company. I'm like, oh, that's great. I think we need to do A, B, and C. And he paused and he thought about it. And he said, what I really need to do is figure out how to best invest in the company. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. That's a very different question that requires a very different answer. So I was naive enough to think that I could go ahead and sit down and figure this out. And it turns out I did. What quickly dawned on me was unless he knew how the decisions in area A affected the decisions in area B and how it affected the whole flow of the organization, he wasn't going to know how to best invest because there are trade-off decisions that needed to be made. So when sitting down and figuring it out for him, it turns out how you can drive not only his company as a whole, but products and projects from potential to profitability and the points in between. And once you know what the head of that river looks like and what the mouth of that river looks like and all the points in between, it immediately makes your life so much easier. When I'm talking to people about the benefits of this particular methodology, I have them do a party trick that we do in workshops, which is to take three groups of people and have them each assemble the exact same jigsaw puzzle. The first group with the puzzle pieces face down, the second group with the puzzle pieces face up, and the third group with the puzzle pieces face up, but with a copy of the puzzle box lid. So the question then becomes, which group is going to be happier, faster, more productive? The people with the puzzle box lid. And that's what integrated thinking does for business, is help them understand what the puzzle box lid looks like. So when I was at Cancer Treatment Centers of America, I'm like, wait a minute, I've got something here. And then later on, when I moved on in my career and I started working at Walmart, I was recruited to work for them. One of the things that Walmart taught me is that good business is fundamentally about three things, just three things, which is understand the flow of the customer experience, understand the flow of the business, and then understand how your decisions and actions impact those two first flows. That's it. That also then was another layer of integrated thinking on top of the layer of integrated thinking that it has already had. And so by combining those things together, I was able to better understand just the way that business flows again, or products or projects from potential to profitability and the points in between, and how important it is that people know. And just to give you a little example, I was working years ago with this woman named Betty, and I was going into a conference room because I was going to present the findings from site selection due diligence for an expansion opportunity. And before I went in, she said, Ken, what are you here to talk about? And I told her, and she goes, well, our department versus their department. It was very much us versus them. And 10 minutes into the meeting, Betty stood up and she goes, we need to do this. We need to do that. And I said, well, wait a minute. You out in the hallway, I pulled her aside afterwards. I said, out in the hallway, you were saying us versus them. 10 minutes into the meeting, you were saying we. What happened? She goes, Ken, once you showed me that when you get a hole in your section of the boat, my ankles get wet, we need to work together. And that was apparent once you showed me, given the flow of business, where I link up, how I connect to others, and how I impact the whole. And so with that little change in understanding, it was a lot easier to work together and compete against people outside the organization than competing with departments within the organization.
So let me take it a step back. I want to break it down a little bit further here. Going back to your puzzle example, the initial one, you had the puzzle pieces upside down. I mean, up and then down, and then ones with the box. So are you talking about actually clearly identifying a destination or vision that everyone rallies around, so it makes decision making easier, or is it more than that?
No, it's kind of both. It's a destination and it's more than that. What it is, I mean by that is it'll be interesting to see if this is relatable to your audience. I've worked with a lot of companies where they'll call in motivational speakers to go, rah, 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 the customer's our number one priority. And later on that same day, the CEO or the head of finance, CFO, will say, shareholders are our number one priority. Well, shareholders resonates with finance, the customer resonates with marketing, and unless you articulate a balancing point, you get turf wars, which reduce the value generated for absolutely everybody. So the methodology that I came up with that fits on a restaurant placemat suitable for coloring that high school students understand actually shows how businesses, whether they're existing or even people doing business plans for a startup, go from potential to profitability and the points in between. And when I say profitability, I'm talking the value generated for the company, the value generated for the customer, and the balancing point. And that's one of the things that they never teach very well, or they have opportunities to improve in business schools, is to teach that balancing point. The challenge is we're taught in silos, we work in silos, we communicate in silos, but as it learned in Walmart, the customer experience and the business flow cut across those silos. So it's important to know how these things fit together.
So how is this related to basically a brand knowing what the brand is and what it's not? And that's part of it too, right? I mean, investors need to know what the brand is so they can invest in it as shareholders, but also customers need to know what the brand is, and employees need to know what the brand isn't. So maybe you can tie it into explain it to me that way as well, so I understand.
Sorry, the reason I'm giggling is this is just so much fun to share this with the world or others or whatever, just because it should make everybody's life so much easier. First, we start up with what a brand is. A brand is the psychic plaquey residue left over from every experience that anyone's ever had with your brand. And what the brand should do is it should help drive profitable behaviors, both inside the company and outside the company. And it does this by taking up unique, positive mental real estate. So it needs to be unique, otherwise you blend in. Positive, because negative doesn't work well, and it needs to take up space in people's heads. Now, determining how it is you want to optimally position your brand. In real estate, they say it's location, location, location. For me in business, it's segment, target position, segment, target position, segment, target position. Segment the market, figure out what your target is, and then you have to position against that. Now, figuring out the positioning is a 6-step fill-in-the-blank process. Again, this fits on a separate restaurant placemat suitable for color. But it's really relatively easy. And what's weird is that it's all stuff that we intuitively know. It's just they don't teach it very well in business schools or anywhere else. So this is what it looks like. Is let's say that Nike is trying to go ahead and sell more shoes and stuff like that. Well, you take a look at what target, and hopefully it's like a growth target that they're aiming at. And you take a step one, what are the current perceptions that these people have that you're trying to win over? Step two is what are their current behaviors that they're doing that you don't want them to do? You want them to buy Nike shoes or buy more shoes. Well, step three is what do you want those perceptions to be? So step four, it'll drive those desired behaviors. That's the goal, because perceptions drive behaviors. So the challenge is that step five is identifying the primary actionable barriers that stand in the way to flipping 1 and 2 to 3 and 4, 4 being the goal. So step 6 is what am I going to design to overcome the barriers in step 5 to get 1 and 2 to flip to 3 and 4 to drive those behaviors. And once you put that on paper and everybody gets in a circle and talks about it and pokes holes in it and things like that, it's easy to come up with a level of consensus that gives everybody clear ideas to what they're doing, why it is they're doing it, how it is they should be doing it, and that can help optimally position a brand with the different targets you need to position it for. and the reason I say different targets is because there's the brand of the organization as a whole, but when you're marketing, there's also slight variations in that brand positioning for particular target markets who value things differently or like different parts of your benefits of your product. Let's take Nike again. Some will like it for the fashion. The Nike is a fashion shoe. Others might be interested in Nike as a performance shoe. So you can take that brand positioning of Nike overall, and you can slightly alter it for the different segments that you're going after to really drive those profitable behaviors in step 4. But oh my goodness, it's so much easier when you put it all down on paper and people can see the linkages.
Going back to the brands, I think part of it is, as a company, you want your brand to stand for something, and that's what you desire to be. And then there's obviously sometimes at the beginning there's going to be some time and misconnections, or perceptions may not be aligned to what you want the brand to be. But over time, you can get there. So how does this translate into, I think, what you're talking about, different messaging and so on, but still keep it part of integrated thinking? Because you're right. I mean, there's going to be different markets. You're going to have different messaging to ultimately drive the core values of the brand all around. And I'm still trying to understand, how does this then translate what you're talking about to the ultimate even messaging to the consumer or the target market?
Sure. Doing that 6-step fill in the blank exercise can help you get to what your brand should be. Once you know what your brand should be and how you want to position that should permeate the entire organization, not even just marketing, but operations and finance too. Because if you do something in marketing that's inconsistent with operationally the way that it's pulled off, customers will go ahead and know about that. But with regard to how you operationalize your brand, I have to apologize in advance because I usually do this as interpretive dance, but we've got a small screen to work with, so I'll try to do my best just sitting here. But I was working for a company, and they had a check cashing product and a credit card product. And they had 2 very different challenges with these products. And so for 6 months, I was using my big boy, big girl words to go ahead and say that these have different challenges. And for 6 months, I was getting glassy eyes, crickets, and just stuff whooshing over their heads. So I came in feeling a little snarky one day. I go, here's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get from the customer's head from them to learn about us, to their smile to like us, to their hands or feet to do something, to their heart for loyalty. How do we win over the whole customer? And so I said, now when we take a look at these 2 products, because this will give you a real life example as to how this has been implemented. I said, with check cashing, everybody knows that we have it, but nobody knows that we have it. But everybody that knows we have it likes it a lot, does it a lot. They're incredibly loyal to it. I said, for credit cards, everybody knows we have it, but they don't like it very much, and they don't do it very much, and they're not very loyal to it. So I said, for credit card, we have a smile problem. For check cashing, we have a head problem. The way that you fix a head problem is very different than the way you fix a smile problem. And so I got 30 seconds of this where I figured they're trying to figure out how to source a cardboard box to get me out of the organization quicker. And what they said instead was, fixing a head problem is very different than fixing a smile problem. To fix the credit card problem, why don't we pull back on some of the marketing, and we'll do a value prop exercise to see if we can fix the smile problem. We'll take some of that money that's then left over and put it in a check cashing, so that way we can fix the head problem, because awareness is so much easier to fix. And so 6 months to nothing, but by using this simple, how do you get from their head to their smile, to their hands or feet, to their heart, and articulating how that works for both of the products and the brand positioning that goes along with this, that immediately got action. So that's one way to go ahead and implement it.
Interesting. So tell me, if you were to tell me, what's the complete opposite of integrated thinking?
Siloed thinking. What happens is people think that, in a company, provided we just optimize marketing and finance and operations and legal and HR, we've optimized each silo, the rest will take care of itself. And so I was working with somebody years ago, and I used Walmart and Sears as an example because they're so diametrically opposed to each other. Walmart understands integrated thinking. Sears does not understand integrated thinking. So I turned it into a tale of 2 centipedes. So centipede 1, Sears thought that they knew how to be a great centipede. So they made each leg as strong as possible. The challenge is the legs didn't know how to work together. So they had a hard time climbing over, around, and through things. And when the legs were stronger on one side than the other, they found themselves walking in a circle. Walmart thought that they knew how to be a great centipede, and they do. They made each leg as strong as possible, but the legs know how to work together. As a result, it's easier for them to climb over, around, and through things. And years later, that centipede was heard to say, "What's a Sears?" And so when you have those two different ways of thinking, I feel bad, but sometimes I'll pick on Six Sigma people. And I go, okay, you're doing Six Sigma. That is a great thing for really refining processes. It's really wonderful. I said, how do you pick your initial goals? Oh, well, senior management gives that to us. And then we optimize the heck out of that. And I'll go, that's great, but how does senior management get those goals to give you, or objectives to make sure you're working on the right ones? Well, senior management, they have a process. They go through it. They do some SWOT analysis. They just give it to us, and then we work on it from there. At Sears, because Six Sigma people that were exceptional at doing Six Sigma weren't sure if they were working on the right things, over and over, they would step back only to realize that they put the shiniest, best coat of paint possible on a totaled car. That's great that the paint is shiny, but if it's upside down, wheels up in a ditch, having the shiniest coat of paint might not be the most important thing at this point. So siloed thinking will oftentimes get you that. Integrated thinking, like at Walmart, will not get you that. And the reason is because they're like, the only way for us to please customers and improve that experience, to take costs out of the system, the only way for us to understand how to take costs out of the system is understand how our business flows, so we can make sure to take costs out of the system. It's just that simple.
How much overlap is there between integrated thinking and integrated communications?
Integrated communications is part of integrated thinking by default. In other words, integrated thinking is almost like the map. And then once you have the map that you're working off of, you use integrated communications to help bring it alive, type thing. Integrated communications externally, as well as integrated communication internally, to make sure that when you're pulling, you're all pulling in the same direction, type of thing. Another metaphor that I like to use is, would you trust builders that didn't know what the blueprints look like? And the answer, everybody says no. And yet we do that in business all the time. We have some people thinking they're building a shed, other people a raised ranch, other people are a high-rise condo, and then we wonder why our building looks so wonky.
So it sounds like a big part of what you're talking about is actually much more integrated, better communications. Would that be correct?
Right, but in order to get better communications, you need to have the thinking in place as to what it is you're communicating first. People, so many cultural initiatives within organizations start up with a lot of fanfare and then die out 6 months later like they never happened in the first place, and usually tend to demotivate people overall. And the reason is because they'll talk about, oh, we're going to integrate communication or do all these things, but unless you know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how to do it, you can wind up spinning your wheels, and next time and the next innovation comes down the pike, you've already got a jaded bunch of employees because you never showed them what the puzzle box lid looked like.
So focusing on just the integrated thinking part, and let's put the communication aside for a second. What do you find are the three biggest hurdles to get people to, one, understand integrated thinking, and then two, to actually start thinking or implementing it?
Yeah, no, this is probably the key question to all of this, because to tell you the truth, integrated thinking is relatively easy. I had a high school student come into my office one day, or they were a summer intern, so they had just started college, but freshly out of high school. They came into my office, and because I showed this to a division president at a large organization, and I showed it to the summer intern the same day. And the division president said, this whole thing is so complex, we're all going to die, type thing. And the summer intern came in, put their hand on my shoulder, closed the door of the office, looked at me in the eye like a loved one of mine had just died, and said, Ken, I don't mean to insult you, but all you've done is write down common sense. And I'm like, I know, right? So the barrier isn't that this is hard. One of the biggest barriers is people knowing that this is even possible. When I speak at conferences, sometimes I'll take 2 minutes out to take the most elite business schools on the planet, kick them squarely in the groin as hard as I can. And the reason is because when you talk about strategy, they'll go, oh, you mean out of our marketing department, or out of our finance department, or one university I was working with to get a Center for Strategy Excellence established said, oh, talk to the head of strategy out of our economics department. Well, there's marketing, finance, operations, legal, HR strategies. There's a bunch of strategies. Where do you show explicitly how they all fit together in the flow of business? And what you usually get is glassy eyes and crickets because they don't know, and it's horribly frustrating. The closest they'll do is case management, case studies, in which case they'll imply a bunch of things. People will infer a bunch of different things, and then they all shoot off in different directions because they're all viewing it from a slightly different angle. So one of the metaphors I like using is picture that you're in a volcanic crater, yet there's a little mountain peak in the middle of it. Everybody that's lined up on that crater will view that same peak from a slightly different angle. So unless you're clear as to what that peak looks like, everybody will have their own personal interpretation as to what they're supposed to be viewing and shoot off in different directions. So part of it is knowing that this is even possible with regard to barriers, because it's not hard, fits on a restaurant placemat, suitable for coloring. High school students understand it. Very visual. So that part's not hard. It's basically getting over institutionalized levels of thinking. And what it is I mean by that, there's a phrase in science that says science progresses one funeral at a time. And unfortunately, a lot of times in business, it's going to be necessary for some of these people, frankly, to die out or retire, for the people that have minds that are still malleable to be able to understand that there's a more easier, happier, faster, more productive way to go ahead and do things. So some of it is thinking that is has calcified. Some of it is not knowing. And then some of it is people have been beaten down so much in some organizations that, like at conferences, I've probably spoken about 80 conferences, and I've had a fair number of people come up to me and go, Ken, this is really great. I understand how it can really help with business. I just wonder when they're going to tell me to do it. Oh my goodness, tell me to do it. Because people have been hammered in a siloed thinking so long. One organization I worked at, and this is also a barrier to change, so I'm addressing your question. If a desk was on fire and there's a bucket of water right next to that desk, and if that desk wasn't put out in the next couple of seconds, it was going to consume the entire building. And as they're walking by, they had the opportunity to turn that bucket of water onto that desk and save the entire company or keep walking. So many employees would just keep walking. And the reason they keep walking is because they've been so beaten and so conditioned to go, well, it's not my job. Nobody told me to do it. And if I work on that, it's going to pull away from my performance review on the other siloed things I'm working at. So it's basically culturally at the top, we need senior executives to know that if you know what your puzzle box looks like, and even if you don't communicate the entire thing or in a bunch of detail, but at least sketch it in a little bit so people understand the flow of the business, where they fit in, how they link up, and how they impact the whole, you're just going to get a bunch of people doing their best while having blinders on. So it's basically awareness. It's basically calcified thinking. It's people having the spirit beaten out of them. The people that tend to usually embrace this really well are entrepreneurs. And I worked with several entrepreneurs, and one of them gave me this really great odd compliment, which is, Ken, this is so great. It helped me nail the Jell-O to the wall. And what they're saying is, because I now have a place for everything and everything in its place, I can now not worry about how this stuff all fits together, and I can spend more mental bandwidth on what to do about it.
So it almost sounds like in order to get to critical thinking, you still need, or integrated thinking, you need integrated communications to be able to align all the macro kind of objectives first, right? And then that will lead to understanding the flows of the customer, flows of the business, and all the things you talked about that you learned at Walmart. Is that correct?
It's sort of switched around a little bit. And what it is I mean by that is if you take pen to paper and very quickly, and I'm saying in a half an hour to an hour exercise, and map out what the flows look like, then you can use integrated communication to then talk in terms of flows and how you're going to optimize the customer experience flow and the business flow to everyone within the organization. But step one is to figure out what those flows look like, either the existing ones or the desired ones.
Well, I mean, part of that you can do with an org chart, right? Let's say an org chart, but that doesn't give you a sense of the quality or the depth of the communications, right? In that flow chart.
I wouldn't necessarily say org chart, because let's take a simple example. This is what it is I mean. If you do integrated communication, that's great. Everybody's talking to each other. What are we talking about? Let's take the customer experience flow and how you get from their head to learn, to like, to do, than total loyalty. Once you understand the flow, then you can talk in an integrated way about that flow. But if you don't know what that flow looks like, integrated communication isn't going to solve much.
But that flow you already know about the customer, right? Is going to go from the head and so on. But ultimately, you need to know input from all the different interactions the customer has with different parts of the organization to get their feedback on what the flow should be, correct or no?
Right. Basically, the customer experience flow actually fits within the business flow. So once you take a half an hour out and it's a Mad Lib like fill in the blank exercise, and I'll send you a worksheet on it where people can do a business model in 20 minutes or less. It's a fill in the blank worksheet. Once you spend half an hour, maybe a whole hour doing this fill in the blank worksheet, now you have a picture of what you're dealing with. And now you can use integrated communication to bring it alive and crush all those who oppose you.
So it sounds like you learned a lot while your time at Walmart. What are the top 3 takeaways or aha moments you had at Walmart that you'd like to share with us?
That good business is really just about 3 things: understanding the flow of the customer experience, understanding the flow of the business, understanding how your decisions and actions impact those 2 flows. So that's one. The second one is then once they understand those flows, using the integrated communication to go ahead and make sure that people internally understand, so they're all pulling in the same direction, doing that, and then making sure to once they have that puzzle box lid, you can update it on the fly as your environment changes and re-communicate it out as to how it impacts the flows to make sure that everybody is balancing on that bubble. One of the things I learned at Walmart is an awful lot of doing business well is like balancing on top of a bubble. But in order to stay on that bubble, you need to continually understand how things internally and externally go ahead and impact those 2 flows, and then make sure to communicate it out to others in really simple ways, just to make sure that they're all pulling in the same direction. Another little metaphor that's really good: the difference between Walmart and Sears. So many companies will say, oh, this company is so big, turning it takes, it's going to take a long time for us to turn once we turn the wheel. That's a lame excuse. And the reason is because at Walmart, they're incredibly nimble, because Walmart moved like 100 pounds of piranhas. If they needed to change, Fortune 1 company, one of the largest companies on the planet, if they needed to change, they engaged everybody's brain and used the flows and integrated communication to get everybody then adjusting in the new direction. Sears moved like one 100-pound shark. And so if that one 100-pound shark needed to change directions, by the time the nose turned, it'd take a while for the tail to show up. At Walmart, everybody could go ahead and move left or right or forward or backward or whatever they needed to do almost instantaneously, because Walmart understood, given those flows, how to communicate them, how to engage everybody's brain to get that way in the same time.
Sounds like you're talking about like when we watch the birds flowing around in the sky, all these small birds that are just going with the flow, right? So give me a concrete example, if you don't mind, of what you're talking about at Walmart, going from the 3 things. If you can give me a concrete example, that'd be really great.
Yeah, one of the examples that it is already gave with check cashing and credit card, that actually came from Walmart. We're going into a marketing meeting that usually goes ahead and takes an hour and a half, where we're trying to figure out how to budget for the next year. And a lot of those times, those meetings come up with incremental improvements. Everybody will leave the room and it will struggle for clarity. Because I worked at Discover Card after I had already worked at Cancer Treatment Centers of America, and the only way that I understood business as flows, those 2 flows, I took a look at everything going on with Discover Card. And with this binder that was distributed throughout the room that was relatively thick, I said, can I just add a cover sheet to it? And they said, sure. And what I did is I took 3 numbers, just 3 numbers, and I put that in terms of the flow as to what we're trying to do to get people from head to heart. And the 3-number cover sheet said, we've got 99% of the people that are aware of Discover Card. We've got 63% of the people that are credit card eligible we already have. So a lot of people know about it. We have over half of the market share in terms of people having it in their wallet. But we only have 4% of the transaction volume across the 4 different networks. So do we need to spend more money on awareness? No. Do we need to spend more money on getting it into their wallet? No. But we do need to spend more money on getting them to use it. So usage advertising campaign and marketing would be so much more valuable than spending it all on awareness. what are we shooting to get 100% when we already have 99? That's a waste of resources. And so with that cover sheet, what would normally take an hour and a half for us to come up with vague conclusions leaving the meeting, we immediately had the conclusion at the very start because of the cover sheet that we need to go ahead and drive usage. That immediately got everyone crystal clear focused on that. And the meeting was so much more productive because the hours we would have wasted trying to figure out what to do, we immediately figured that out. Then it was how to go ahead and do it. And it was a much more productive meeting.
And so what do you find are the three easiest ways to get people to start thinking about integrated thinking or implementing it?
The three easiest ways is number one, realize that you can do it by yourself. In other words, I've worked at some organizations that really embraced integrated thinking, like Walmart was all about it. And so it was really easy to do integrated thinking there. I worked at other companies where integrated thinking, you might as well be speaking Klingon to them because they just, I have no idea what you're talking about. But the great thing is that you don't need absolutely everybody else to do it. It's helpful, but it's not absolutely necessary. You can make better decisions within your role, given the things that they've given you to make decisions and take actions on, if you understand what those flows look like. Ideally, then working out in concentric circles outward to make sure that everybody else is kind of thinking along those lines too, because it will make everybody happier, faster, more productive if you have the puzzle box lid, because then you'll have a common vocabulary to overcome shared obstacles to reach joint goals. Because without that common vocabulary, it's a bunch of people wandering around in the dark while the furniture is continually being moved. It's just messy and painful and ooh.
So, Ken, I'm curious, what are the 5 key benefits you'd say of integrated thinking?
Oh, Darshan, that is such a great question. And the reason is because integrated thinking can help you adapt better than other competitors. It can make everyone happier, faster, and more productive. It can help you quickly get more out of your data. And it's the best way to know how to invest in your customers and your company. And it provides a unified, aligned balancing point that helps you get more out of the same resources than your competitors can. And what happens, I've got a series of slides here that I'd love to go through really quick, just to go ahead and give you a feel as to what it is that makes it more intuitive. One of them I covered a little bit before. It shows the tale of the 2 centipedes. And I use Sears and Walmart as 2 examples because they're at totally opposite ends of the continuum. Walmart integrated thinking, great stuff. Sears siloed thinking, optimizing the company into the ground. And the difference between, it's not just getting your strongest legs, but getting your legs to go ahead and work together. And so I'll send you that slide. And then making everybody happier, faster, more productive. That gets into the puzzle box lid of having 3 groups of people, puzzle piece face down, second group puzzle pieces face up, third group with the puzzle pieces face up, and a copy of the puzzle box lid. The people are going to be happiest, fastest, more productive, the people with the puzzle box lid, which then you can ask yourself, does our company know what our puzzle box lid looks like? Do our competitors know what their puzzle box lid looks like? Is there a chance that our competitors know what our puzzle box lid looks like better than we do? Yikes. That's a problem. And then there's another slide on quickly getting more out of your data than your competitors can. And this is a wonderful graphic that shows the way that Sears understands data, which is as bar charts and text labels and little dots and things like that. Walmart takes that exact same data, same size, shape, number of pieces, everything, and puts them in relationship to each other to come up with, and the example I use is a CTA map of what the transportation system looks like. So if you're trying to tell people how to get from Dempster to Midway, which you'll see on the slide, you can say, oh, take the yellow line to the red line to the orange line. If you're using data the way that Sears does, there's no way of knowing how those things fit together. You can't get those same insights. So that gives you a really intuitive sense as the power of knowing how all this stuff fits together. And then it's the best way to invest. Again, getting back to Cancer Treatment Centers of America, unless you know how the decisions in one area of the business affect the decisions in the other area of business and how it affects the whole, given the flow, you're not going to know. And then for this notion of balance, which business schools have huge opportunities to be better at teaching, but in order to teach balance, they have to actually show how these flows work, is I use this metaphor with senior executives. I go, think of customers as being one handrail of a boat. think of the shareholders as being the other handrail of the boat. Running from handrail to handrail just rocks the boat. What you really need to do is describe what that shiny star is off on the horizon so you can drive both handrails to that star. That's actually the best way to do business. And how to outrun your competition is just being better at knowing what you need to do, why you need to do it, how you need to do it, and how to do it efficiently. And so that's really the 5 top benefits.
Interesting. So I'm curious, how do you see integrated thinking evolving and changing moving forward?
The way that it is that it's evolved up to this point is I used it just on single things, and then I've nested some of them together. Let's take Walgreens as an example. Walgreens has a business model of, I was working at Walgreens helping payers include Walgreens into their plans and ideally as their preferred pharmacy within their health plans. But in order to make the best decisions in the business model that was Walgreens and healthcare payers, is that I needed to understand how the flow worked. And the way the flow works is there's a business model of Walgreens and the people that come into the stores. That business model is an input into the business model of Walgreens and the payers that Walgreens works with. And that business model is an input into the business model of the payers and their members. So from store to the pharmacy and the payers, all the way down to the insurance members, there's a flow. And those insurance members are the exact same people at that bottom business model, are the exact same people that are the people that come in the store of that top business model. So once you understand how business models nest together, you can then have a conversation regarding what the ecosystem looks like. So that way you can make sure if you're a multinational organization or you've got a lot of different departments that you can make decisions in one area that don't damage decisions in another area, that they can not only optimize the area you're working on, but there may be decisions that you can make that optimize the way it works across the entire organization as a whole. And so that's another way to get involved. But getting it to evolve past that, let's say that I've got 40 years between now and the time I'm dead. Just doing these basics is going to it's going to take some time because it's not hard. It's relatively easy to do. But culturally, we need people to understand that there's real benefits to having the left hand know what the right hand's doing. That's why Walmart, you'll never hear people talk about Walmart going out of business because they've got the secret sauce. They know how to work at it. They know how to do it. And it's not hard. Even the smallest companies, mom and pop entrepreneurs can use the same methodology. The main evolution is going to get people to open their minds to see that, oh, this isn't hard. A high school student understands it. It fits on a restaurant placemat suitable for coloring. And Ken's a business geek. We can. He loves talking shop. We can reach out to him anytime, and he's more than happy to go ahead and help them understand how to apply it to their organization.
So I'm curious, if it's not hard, it's not difficult, why don't most people do it?
Because the difficulty is with knowing that it's even possible and then getting them to think differently. The guy that, and here's a good example, the guy that initially came up with the idea of germ theory, that because he noticed through data that when a midwife helped a woman deliver their child, they had relatively good outcome. But when a doctor that was doing, let's say, working on cadaver had gone ahead and helped a woman deliver her baby, the results weren't as good. And so he came up with the crazy idea is that you should germ theory and you should wash your hands because there's disease and bacteria submitted after dealing with cadavers to actually helping women deliver their children. And he died in an insane asylum and was really thought of as a crazy individual because they all thought he was nuts, and yet it's common practice every day. That's the same difficulty we face. Here's another one too, and this is one of my favorites. Edward Deming came up with Six Sigma and statistical improvement and things like that. The companies in the US, frankly, were not bright enough to go ahead and understand the value of that. So he had to go to Japan to get them to, because they're like, well, it makes sense to us. And so Japan immediately started doing continuous improvement and statistical examination of their processes, made better cars, and then proceeded to go ahead and kick the American car companies right in the groin really hard. And it wasn't until they got kicked enough times that they go, maybe we should do something about that. That's basically the exact same challenge that this faces, is basically calcified thinking.
Interesting. So if you could have lunch or dinner with anyone in the industry regarding integrated thinking, who would it be and why?
There's two answers to this. And the reason I say there's two answers, And the first one makes me a little sad. There's a guy, Don Schultz. He's considered the father of integrated marketing communication out of Medill School out of Northwestern. He and I had a number of conversations. I love him dearly, and he's since passed on. And I would love to be able to go back and have more conversations with him. And there are many conversations with him and I that ended with, yeah, what the hell are wrong with these people? But with regard to somebody that's living, I guess it'd probably be Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett, even if people don't understand how Warren Buffett came to conclusions, they understand that Warren Buffett understands things. And so if I could have lunch with Warren Buffett and explain to him that we can all be happier, faster, more productive, if people could just see the value of having the left hand know what the right hand's doing and the fact that it's not hard. And then he said it, even people that didn't even exactly know how it worked would probably at least start going, oh, well, if he said it, it's probably useful, and then have good things happen. My fear is that I'm going to wind up like Nostradamus or something like that. And about 400 years after I'm dead, they're going to say, didn't Ken say something about this? And that's like, damn it.
Hey, you know, what do they say? Better late than never. Listen, Ken, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Appreciate all your insights and stories regarding integrated thinking. It's making me think at a different level. So thank you very much for that.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, Darshan. And if nothing else, it's been at least therapy for me.
Yeah, let's see what the history books say 400 years from now. All right. Thanks a lot, Ken. Getting to AHA was brought to you by iResearch. To find out more about us, head to iResearch.com and make sure to search for Getting to AHA in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else podcasts are found. And don't forget to click follow to ensure you don't miss any future episodes. Thank you for listening.